like a sore thumb.
Okay. It was always sort of more governmentally inclined.
It's something we're starting up.
Oh, you're
very
starting.
fresh. Very new.
Is it going to be here at AU?
No, it's a think tank. There's a website though.
Really? May we exchange cards
Yes, absolutely.
before we proceed?
Yeah.
Otherwise,
Yeah, that's our stuff.
you may not.
We can also exchange small gifts.
I didn't bring any.
Beware of Serbs bringing gifts, right? You have to have fun with this. Yeah.
Oh, we're gonna have lots of fun.
Well, give them the oxygen and come to you when it's in the room like you're
Okay, this is working. Start. Your mic's on. All right. So welcome to the third segment of today's presentation, where the panel will address the transitional character of post-revolutionary Balkans in North Africa. Our first panelist, first speaker, is it going to be you or? I have it here that the first speaker is going to be Jonathan Moore, Director of the Office of South Central European Affairs at the U.S. Department of State. And he will be speaking about U.S. policy goals and perspectives in the Balkans. And then I have a second speaker, Obrad Kesic, Senior Partner at TSM Global Consultants. And he will be presenting an overview of lessons learned from international involvement in post-conflict states in the Balkans. And last but not least, our third speaker, Dr. Thomas Mroczkowski, Professor of the Department of International Business at American University, will talk about the success of the Arab Spring, the lessons from the transformations in Eastern and Central Europe. Just as a short introduction, I would like to say that you know, as an overview in terms of transitions, democratic transitions, certainly in the Balkans, the very strong sense of ethnic identity, not just culturally, but in terms of each ethnic group's sense of security, personal safety, and even their future and prosperity, really plays a role in the kind of democracies that are emerging, and certainly needs to be taken into account. And sometimes perhaps here from Washington we have a different vision of how we would like to see the Balkans compared to the individual ethnic groups and how they see their history and their future. So with this in mind, please join me in welcoming the guests. Mr. Jonathan Moore, would you like to start?
Sure, thank you very much. I'm struck by this opportunity. I'm very glad to be here. I first set foot in this building as a freshman at AU rather a long time ago. Spent an entire year in McDowell 615 and recovered from the experience, and I'm glad to be back. Then and when I joined the Foreign Service, what is now the Western Balkans was two countries, Yugoslavia and Albania. Now it's rather more than that. We sort of hope that that process has stopped for now. We think the number is just about right. With apologies for this being an academic setting and an academic conference, I don't have formal prepared remarks, and frankly I'm much more interested in hearing what the other panelists have to say and what you as an audience want to discuss. But let me just lay out quickly what the policy approach of the U.S. government is towards the region. I don't want to dwell on comments made by the previous panel about the United States not paying that much attention to the Balkans. It is certainly true that in the 1990s we paid a lot more attention because there were a couple of conflicts going on, arguably even three, if you include what was going on in Macedonia in 2000-2001. The attention of the United States was very active because these were front burner issues. As a desk officer at the time, I can tell you it was deeply frustrating waiting for policy to be formulated towards Bosnia. That finally came about in 1995. The Kosovo conflict developed, and that attracted a great deal of our attention. The Obrad Framework Agreement required our attention. To jump around a bit, obviously we hosted the Dayton Accords in the fall of 1995. Ever since and in between those different periods, it's been the policy and approach of the United States to engage the countries to find peaceful solutions and to find approaches to integrate them all into a situation that will bring them more prosperity and more stability, as well as, of course, democratic principles and human rights. There have been different ways to look at this. The two key tools, and certainly they're imperfect and certainly they have their flaws, have been NATO and the EU. NATO is slightly different in terms of the region. Not all countries in the region have expressed interest in joining NATO. Serbia, having stated so far, it is not their policy to pursue NATO membership. The other countries of the region do want that. All countries have talked about being in the EU. Again, without dwelling on that either, the EU is an important institution. The process of getting in the EU, harmonizing the legislation, etc., is almost as important as the eventual goal of membership. This is something which has transformed the region. During the conflict, for example, in Bosnia 92, 95, neither Belgrade nor Zagreb were remotely interested or even talking about EU membership. It wasn't a serious possibility. It has clearly motivated Croatia to make any number of reforms to harmonize all the legislation. We congratulate Croatia on being imminently a member of the EU at the beginning of July. Everything seems to be in order for that. A few more ratifications to come. An issue with Slovenia fortunately worked out. Even Serbia is very highly motivated by the goal of being in the EU, as is proven by the agreement signed on April 19th between the prime ministers of Kosovo and Serbia that offers Serbia very clear prospects to move towards the EU to advance its membership process, an agreement that, by the way, also advances Kosovo's EU prospects towards a stabilization and association agreement, as well as being able to operate in EU structures. Truth be told, in Bosnia, it's not so simple. The EU is not a clear motivation. It's much more convenient to sit stuck in the mud and spin your wheels a little more quickly or a little more slowly, depending on the mood. That is a subject of great frustration. I'd be open to suggestions as how we can get Bosnia out of that morass, having spent 3 years there as the ambassador's deputy. I wouldn't necessarily agree with what Stephen Meyer had to say about the situation earlier, but granted, it is stuck and it is frustrating, and we don't have any clear, obvious, easy tools to fix it. So with the overall perspective for the region of wanting to see movement towards NATO and the EU, I think it's important to note we have not forgotten about the region. The level of interest in the region is very high. Sure, Secretary Clinton couldn't fix things overnight, but she went to 5 of the 7 countries, importantly to 3 of those countries, to Serbia, Kosovo, and Bosnia-Herzegovina. She went together with Catherine Ashton. Some people interpret this as the United States putting the region, putting the Western Balkans on the back burner. That is not our intention. There are a lot of things going on in the world. We have some of our largest embassies, a huge number of diplomats and other programs in the Balkans, but it's also true that what we as diplomats are able to do there is very much subject, in a democracy, to the decisions of our elected leaders. And if you look at people in the White House, if you look at people in Congress, there are natural shifts based on 9/11, based on all sorts of other circumstances around the world. What's certainly going on in Northern Africa deserves a great deal of our attention. I apologize, I can't speak to that because that's not my area of expertise. It's not the region I work on at state. But in any case, we are committed to doing what we can in this region very actively. And perhaps in the headlines it appears that we've sort of forgotten about things and left them alone. I can guarantee to you today, if you talk to the delegations either from Belgrade or from Pristina, or for that matter, the team from Brussels, about the role of the United States in the negotiating process, in the ongoing 10 rounds of the dialogue to bring about this very important agreement on the 19th of April, every single one of them will tell you that the United States played a very critical role encouraging and supporting the process. So without trying to sound too defensive, we're proud of what we're doing. We're proud of the direction we're sending the region in. And again, I look forward to hearing what the other panelists have to say. I'm glad to be back here at AU. And I look forward to hearing what your questions are and trying to find both diplomatic and practical answers to them. Thank you very much.
Let me start with two little notes. First, I also have an AU connection. It goes back to 1988 and interviewing for graduate school, and this was one of my choices. I didn't come here, but that was the first time I've been to this campus. This is the second time I've been to this campus, so with a little bit of time in between, I'm happy to be back.